Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's community call. We hold these calls every other Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. UTC. Today, we have some different updates to go through. I'll give an update on the tokenomics project. We'll talk about the audit phase and the upcoming governance votes. I'll go through some ecosystem updates. I'll talk about the recent listing with DeFi Edge being listed on Nexus Mutual. I'll highlight the conversation I had with Jeremiah of OpenCover on the Optimist podcast. And I'll talk a little bit about Nexus Mutual's presence at the Staking Summit in Istanbul, which is coming up here in just a little over a week. We'll hear the weekly update from the foundation. He was going to send it over to me, and I'll be able to read that because he was having some link issues today. And then I'll go over the last week in review, and I'll talk about the recent cover sales and our current active cover amount. And then I'll open things up for an open forum. So if anybody has any questions or wants to cover anything that we haven't talked about today, they can take that opportunity during the open forum and ask questions or bring up a discussion. So without further ado, I will just jump right into things and give an update on the tokenomics revamp project. So we've been giving pretty periodic updates just about every week in the tokenomics category on the Nexus Mutual forum. You can find the historic ones there. We've had a lot of different phases that we've gone through so far. And I know a lot of people are watching the tokenomics project pretty closely. So I wanted to talk about some of the recent milestones that we've gone through. So phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 have been completed. And the engineering and R&D teams have made significant progress during the audit phase. And we're nearly to the last milestone before the tokenomics upgrade can be implemented pending that last phase with the full member on-chain governance vote. So right now, while we're in that auditing phase, we're going through a solidity audit that's underway for Misoro and the Chaos Labs economic audit, which is nearing completion. As these audits are finalized, we'll share updates in the tokenomics section of the governance forum. And should there be any recommended fixes in either of the audits, the engineering team will make the necessary changes to ensure the RAM launch is as secure as possible, should members vote to approve the Nexus Mutual Protocol Improvement Proposal that will be posted and put on-chain once the auditing stage is completed. In the latest tokenomics update that is on the forum, we had one member ask about the security precautions the team is putting in place for the RAM launch beyond the 2 audits, and I wanted to share that information on today's call as well. At launch, the engineering team will be closely monitoring the Nexus Mutual smart contracts. And the team already has smart contract monitoring in place, but there will be enhanced monitoring in place for the RAM launch. The team is also going to implement circuit breakers in the RAM contract, which will limit the maximum amount of ETH that can be withdrawn and the maximum amount of NXM that can be minted via capital contributions over a defined period of time. These limits can be adjusted and progressively raised over time after careful monitoring to make sure that everything is working as it should. And if everything does work smoothly, those limits, like I said, can be raised without issue. But in a worst case scenario, this also limits the damage an attacker could potentially do. If a vulnerability is found, disclosed, or should an attack take place, the advisory board does have the power to execute an emergency pause the RAM contract. The advisory board also has the power to enable and disable that emergency pause for the entire protocol or a portion of it if a vulnerability is discovered. And if that emergency pause is enabled, that would prevent any swaps from happening. For those of you who are not familiar with the advisory board and their function in Nexus Mutual governance, the advisory board is made up of 5 long-term aligned members who have been involved with the mutual from the earliest days. They provide members of the mutual with guidance on improvement proposals, and they have the power to take emergency action if required. You can learn more about the advisory board in the governance section of the Nexus Mutual documentation. We've shared this before, but I just want to highlight that security is paramount to the team, and they have taken every opportunity to test the smart contracts. We're going through these 2 audits from industry experts to find any vulnerabilities in the economic design or the solidity code, and we've put in place safeguards to protect capital pool assets at launch. I'm working with Ray on the educational materials, which include updated information in our documentation, announcements about the upcoming governance vote, and more comprehensive information about the security measures in place for launch. I'll be able to share a timeline and a date for the governance vote once the auditing phase is completed. And I'll share more information as soon as I have that available. We're just waiting for the auditing phase to wrap up, and Ray will continue to post regular updates on the governance forum as well. So before I move on, I just wanted to ask if there's any questions on that update before I move to the next slide. Okay. If not, I will move on to the next slide. I wanted to talk a bit about DeFi Edge, which is a recent listing on the Nexus Mutual interface that you'll be able to find. DeFi Edge was recently listed. For those of you who aren't familiar, DeFi Edge is built on top of Uniswap v3, and the protocol connects liquidity providers with strategy managers. So people who want to provide liquidity can have a more streamlined process and a better way to LP and Uniswap v3 pools. Strategy managers can actively manage assets provided by users and help them take advantage of increased yields in Uniswap v3 without spending a lot of time and effort continuously updating liquidity positions and trying to follow market movements. So after listing DeFi Edge, we saw a large cover buy for 600,000 for both DeFi Edge and Uniswap v3, which is the protocol underlying DeFi Edge, like I shared. The member who purchased cover is now protected against exploits, hacks, and governance attacks. There's currently 1.5 or 1.6 million DAI worth of capacity available for DeFi Edge. So if you're an active DeFi Edge user, you can buy protocol cover in the Nexus Mutual UI, or you can save on gas fees and buy cover from open cover on Arbitrum, Optimism, or Base. DeFi Edge is deployed on Ethereum, Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, and BSC, which means you can use open cover to buy cover on the same network you're LPing with DeFi Edge. And if you're not familiar with DeFi Edge, you can check out their documentation, do your own research, and visit their website to learn more. I do see we have some folks from DeFi Edge on the call, so I just wanted to invite you, if you want to jump in and share a little bit of information about DeFi Edge, feel free to do so before we move on. All right, I see Ice Bear's message. Ice Bear says, hello everybody, this is Ice Bear from DeFi Edge. She's having a little issue with her mic today. DeFi Edge is an asset management protocol that operates on concentrated liquidity, decentralized exchanges. As a permissionless platform, it employs strategy managers to create and effectively oversee their positions, thereby enhancing their fee earnings. Additionally, DeFi Edge provides a range of features such as the ability to work with multiple ranges within a single strategy or position, and the option to receive notification messages for rebalancing through webhooks, among others. You can check out more details about DeFi Edge on their website, defiedge.io. So thank you, Ice Bear, for sharing that info. And if anybody else from the team wants to share anything, we can pick that up on the open forum section. But I'm going to move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the conversation I had with Jeremiah of Open Cover on the Optimist podcast. So this past Friday, we joined Subly, the host of the Optimist podcast. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, the Optimist is a podcast hosted on Twitter with a weekly newsletter about the optimism ecosystem. During our conversation, we talked about quite a few things, including the most common risks present on chain and in DeFi, the origins of on-chain coverage, some examples of cover models that have and have not worked to date, and the latest progress, updates, and future roadmap for both Nexus Mutual and Open Cover. I just wanted to share some of the biggest takeaways from our conversations. Essentially, anybody who is deploying capital on-chain, whether they're a retail investor deploying a small amount or a large fund that is putting millions of dollars on-chain, they're exposed to the same risks and the risks of hack and exploits, sudden economic movements that create losses. This year alone, according to Immunify's reports, we've seen more than 1.3 billion lost in on-chain hacks just in the last 3 quarters. Among some of the biggest losses of the year have been Euler Finance and the multi-chain bridge attack. Jeremiah and I talked a little bit about the different users on chain, and Jeremiah from Open Cover shared that a lot of people are still unaware that they can buy cover to protect themselves, especially given we've seen more people being onboarded to Base, Optimism, Arbitrum, and Polygon, and some other alternative L1s and different Ethereum L2s. So some folks that get started may not be aware of all of the different DeFi protocols and the services that are available to them, like buying cover to protect your position. The Open Cover is looking to make cover more accessible on L2s and develop new crypto native cover products in collaboration with the mutual to protect people against prevalent risks on chain. We talked a lot about phishing attacks and malicious transactions as well. This is something that you can't really cover because it's easy for someone to spoof that, and it's hard to verify as an assessor whether or not something is legitimate. But there has been a lot of progress in detecting malicious transactions. I talked a little bit about MetaMask snaps. For people who are using MetaMask, you can install the Wallet Guard or the FortiSnap, and that snap, what it does is it'll alert you if there's a potentially malicious transaction in MetaMask. It'll give you a warning and encourage you to decline the transaction because it may be a transaction that's trying to steal your funds. This is really great if there's an instance where a front end has been compromised and it's trying to get you to approve a malicious transaction, or if there's some phishing attempt where you click on a link and they're asking to sign to give over access to the assets in your wallet. So there have been some good developments there. If you're a MetaMask user, I would really encourage you to look at MetaMask snaps and to consider installing the Wallet Guard or FortiSnap to give you that added protection. There are some other wallets too that have this built in, like Ravi. I know that Ravi wallet has built-in protections that gives people alerts if there is a malicious transaction detected as well. So we talked a little bit about that, and we also shared some information on our respective roadmaps. I'll be sharing an updated roadmap on the Nexus Mutual forum in the coming weeks, but you can listen to this episode on the Optimist for some advanced alpha, and you can find the link to that in the Nexus Mutual live chat and in the DAO forums community call thread as well. But it was a really great conversation, and I highly encourage everyone to check out the recording. I really enjoyed talking with Jeremiah and Subley from the Optimist. And I wanted to highlight Nexus Mutual's presence at the Staking Summit, which is going to be in Istanbul. It'll take place during DevConnect. And some of the team will be attending the Staking Summit on the 10th and 11th of November. As a leading provider of on-chain ETH staking cover, the Nexus Mutual team will be participating in some panel discussions. And I know the team is looking forward to talking with other industry leaders during the summit. So if you're going to be attending the Staking Summit, you want to connect with the team, please reach out through the Contact Us page on the Nexus Mutual website. If you reach out there, the team can follow up and set a time to set a meeting with you. So looking forward to that. Once the recordings after the Staking Summit become available, I'll be sure to share those too in future newsletters and community calls. But that concludes my updates. So I will cover the foundation updates. If you joined before the beginning, he was having some mic issues today as well. So he has shared an update for me to share. On the tokenomics front, everything is going very well. Smart contract auditing is looking to be closed out by the end of this week, and Chaos Labs is in process of finalizing the report. Once that's available, we'll be able to share that as well. You can find that on the forum. I'll make announcements on all of our socials too when that is available. The team has been working on a large project. They are progressing well with a more traditional player and a large potential deal. Hugh and the team is hoping to share more information on this on the governance forum over the coming month, as it will require members' approval through an on-chain governance vote. So once I have more information about that, I will share that with you on the forum. He was just highlighting in the chat that he's very excited for the tokenomics revamp, and we're almost there, and he's right on that. But more generally, he wanted me to share that they are discussing with multiple more traditional parties like broker groups and other support service players within the insurance space on utilizing the Nexus Mutual Capital Pool to set up MGA-like business. There continues to be a large capacity shortage in general insurance markets, and the team is working out how we can get access, or how these players can get access to our capacity in more real-world markets. And if we can unlock this is going to be key into unlocking the next phase of growth. A lot of promising discussions happening on this front as well. Again, I don't have any specifics to share here, but once more information is available, especially on the large project, you can find those updates on the forum, and you can be sure that I'll update you on Discord, on Twitter, and in our monthly newsletter as well. So that is the update on the foundation side. Does anybody have any questions for Hugh in the chat before we move on? If not, I can move on to the weekly analysis. You can find this in the chat for today as well, and you can find this in the DAO forum, but the weekly analysis is shared on the forum at the beginning of every week. Looking at the last week in cover sales, Mutual sold a little over 3 million in cover, with the largest covers being purchased for Curve and Balancer V2. And members earned roughly 6,000 in fees in the last week. The active cover amount has increased week over week. Last week it was around 33 million, and we've seen a boost up to 36.2 million in total active cover. You can see the split between ETH and DAI. It's about 1/3 ETH share and 2/3 DAI share. You can find more detailed analysis on the forum as well. All of this information is pulled from the Nexus Mutual Dune dashboards. There's been some issues in the last week with some of the queries on the Dune dashboards, but those are being investigated and looked at. I know that there were some issues on the cover dashboard and the Capital Pools dashboard. Capital Pools dashboard has been updated, and the covers dashboard is being updated as we speak. So all of that should be updated and up to date here. I'm hoping within the end of the week. Oh, he was saying he believes that they are fixed now. So those should all be fixed as well. But if there are any other issues, I'll share an update a little later today as well. And now I want to open things up to the community. If anybody wants to bring up anything they'd like to talk about, or if they have any questions they'd like to raise, you can do so now during the open forum section of the call. If there is nothing, I can wrap things up for today. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I know it's not celebrated all around the world, but a very happy Halloween to anybody who partakes in the holiday. We'll have more updates coming shortly on tokenomics. You can look to the forum for Ray's weekly update. As more information becomes available, I will share that across our social channels too and keep everybody updated. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and we will see you on the call 2 weeks from now. Bye, everybody.